You heard that right. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett has just filed an eye-popping $80 million lawsuit against Karoline Leavitt. This isn't some symbolic gesture. This is a high-stakes legal battle that's already sending shockwaves through political circles and the media landscape. And while many people are still trying to figure out how it escalated to this point, those paying close attention saw the tension building for months. It began as a series of heated exchanges in the EUEC public arena, on social media, in interviews, and in televised debates. Leavitt, known for her unapologetic style and hard-hitting rhetoric, had been increasingly vocal about her political opponents. But something shifted recently. One particular statement, one that quickly made the rounds online, was more than a pointed opinion. According to Crockett's legal team, it crossed a serious legal boundary. They're claiming it wasn't just offensive or divisive, it was defamatory. And now they're holding her accountable in the most public, most costly way imaginable. The $80 million figure isn't arbitrary. Crockett's attorneys argue that the damage done to her reputation, career prospects, and even her personal safety has been incalculable. They've compiled documentation showing the fallout, threats, harassment, loss of opportunities, all allegedly triggered by what they describe as willfully false and malicious statements made by Leavitt. According to their filing, this wasn't a mistake, a slip of the tongue, or a misunderstood quote. They say it was a calculated move intended to harm, discredit, and inflame. Once the lawsuit was announced, media outlets jumped on the story. Some outlets rushed to defend Leavitt, framing her words as protected speech and calling the lawsuit an attack on free expression. Others highlighted the legal precedent this case could set, especially if the court sides with Crockett. This isn't just a personal battle. It's shaping up to be a test case for how far political figures can go when criticizing their opponents without facing legal consequences. And it's not just the money that's turning heads. It's the language used in the filing. Words like vindictive, targeted, and reckless appear throughout the court documents. The case lays out a timeline of events, pairing each inflammatory statement with corresponding threats and public backlash faced by Crockett. Her team is drawing a direct line between the rhetoric and the real-world consequences, painting a vivid picture of how digital attacks can spill over into actual harm. Some legal experts are calling it one of the boldest defamation suits in modern political history. Others are urging caution, noting that proving actual malice, the legal standard required when suing a public figure, is notoriously difficult. Still, Crockett's team seems confident, and they're backed by a group of seasoned attorneys who specialize in high-profile defamation and civil rights cases. Behind the scenes, the mood is tense. Political allies are choosing sides. Public statements are being drafted with extra care. Social media teams are working overtime to monitor responses and control the narrative, and the public is watching it all unfold in real time, with every new development dissected and debated across news panels and podcasts. It's the kind of political drama that exposes not just individual rivalries, but the deeper divisions in American discourse. This case could have implications far beyond the courtroom. If it proceeds, and especially if it goes to trial, every detail of their interactions, every post, every interview, every soundbite will be scrutinized under the harsh light of cross-examination. Both reputations are on the line. One woman is demanding justice for what she claims is a coordinated smear campaign. The other now finds herself at the center of a legal firestorm, where every word she's spoken could come back to haunt her. What's clear is this: the gloves are off. And this isn't just political theater anymore. It's real, it's legal, and it's expensive. The lines between free speech, personal attack, and defamation are being tested like never before. Just a few short months ago, Karoline Leavitt was one of the fastest rising voices in conservative politics. She had the spotlight. She had the momentum. Media outlets couldn't get enough of her sharp-tongued takedowns and confident on-air presence. Invitations to speak at major events poured in. Her social media platforms were exploding with engagement. She was hailed by supporters as a fresh face with grit, someone who didn't back down and wasn't afraid to say what others only whispered. But that trajectory has taken a sharp nosedive, fast. The moment news of the $80 million lawsuit broke, everything changed. Overnight, the tone surrounding her shifted. No more glowing headlines. No more enthusiastic endorsements. Instead, sponsors began quietly pulling out. Speaking engagements were suddenly postponed. Media interviews that had already been booked were abruptly canceled with vague excuses. PR representatives that once championed her began distancing themselves. The political world moves quickly, and Leavitt is finding out just how brutal that speed can be when the winds turn. The lawsuit didn't just introduce legal peril, it triggered a domino effect of reputational damage. For someone whose power depended so heavily on public visibility and media access, the silent treatment from the industry is more than just inconvenient. It's career-threatening. Supporters who were once loud and unwavering have gone noticeably quiet. Some have scrubbed past collaborations from their websites. Others now describe her as a distraction or too hot to handle. The same. Outlets that used to rush to book her are choosing safer voices, afraid of being associated with what is rapidly becoming a volatile and unpredictable public relations storm. It's not just about whether she's guilty or innocent, it's about optics, and in the world of politics and media, optics often matter more than truth. Social media has also turned into a minefield. Once a platform of strength for her, it's now filled with calls for accountability, criticism from former allies, and a flood of commentary dissecting every word she's ever said. Old clips are being recirculated. Past interviews are being re-examined through a different lens. Critics are using this moment to paint a broader narrative, one that paints her not as a rising star, but as a cautionary tale of recklessness. What's perhaps most striking is how quickly silence has replaced support. Those who were eager to ride the wave of her popularity are nowhere to be found. There are no high-profile defenses, no coordinated media pushback. Even within political circles that once praised her as bold and fearless, there is now a palpable hesitation. No one wants to be tied to a figure at the center of such a massive legal and public fallout. Her team is working overtime to contain the damage, but the problem is that the damage isn't just about public perception, it's about loss of influence. Political power is often rooted in access, to donors, to voters, to media platforms. The lawsuit has made Leavitt radioactive in all three arenas. Donors are wary of giving money to someone with a legal cloud hanging over her. Political strategists don't want to tie their efforts to a name that's become synonymous with controversy. And voters, particularly swing voters, tend to shy away from drama they don't fully understand. This kind of cancellation isn't always loud. It doesn't always come with a dramatic announcement or fiery backlash. Often, it's a quiet exile, a slow erasure from the spaces she once dominated, and that's exactly what's unfolding now. Her name is being left off lists, her image omitted from promotional materials, her voice absent from the conversations that matter. She's still speaking, but fewer people are listening. The speed at which her influence has diminished is a stark reminder of how unforgiving the political world can be. There's no parachute, no grace period. Once you become a liability, the system that once lifted you up can drop you without a second thought. In this environment, perception often moves faster than due process. And for Karoline Leavitt, that means being forced to fight not only a legal battle, but a battle to stay relevant in a world that seems to have already... It all started with a single clip. Just a few minutes of broadcast footage, but enough to ignite a political firestorm and change the trajectory of an entire career. In the clip, Karoline Leavitt, known for her unapologetic and hard-charging communication style, made a statement during a televised interview that, according to many, crossed a line. It wasn't just provocative, it was explosive. Within hours, it was clipped, captioned, and circulated across every major social media platform. What might have been a forgettable political jab turned into something far bigger, with consequences more serious than anyone could have anticipated. What stood out wasn't just the words themselves, but the tone, the delivery, and the timing. In the polarized landscape of modern media, words aren't just words, they're weapons. And in this case, the clip was wielded like a grenade. Activists, pundits, and even some lawmakers immediately condemned the remarks, calling them inflammatory and deeply inappropriate. Within 24 hours, national news outlets were running segments analyzing every second of the footage. Hashtags began trending. Opinion columns sprang up like wildfire. The moment had gone viral, and there was no containing it. The response was immediate and intense. Civil rights organizations issued statements. Legal analysts chimed in, questioning whether the language used could be grounds for civil action. The clip was replayed on television talk shows, picked apart frame by frame. For some, it was further confirmation of what they'd long believed about Leavitt's political persona: abrasive, divisive, and unfiltered. For others, even those sympathetic to her general ideology, it was a moment that crossed from rhetoric into recklessness. The public reaction grew even more heated when details of the fallout began to surface. According to statements later released, the individual referenced in the clip, directly or indirectly, began receiving a wave of online threats and personal attacks. Supporters of that individual linked these incidents directly to the language used by Leavitt, arguing that the platform she spoke from carried weight and influence. In their view, this wasn't just an offensive comment. It was a spark that lit a dangerous fire. As the pressure mounted, legal teams sprang into action. What began as a PR crisis rapidly morphed into a legal one. Attorneys reviewed the footage, transcripts, and the wider context of Leavitt's comments. The focus wasn't just on whether her words were offensive, but whether they constituted defamation, false statements made with intent to harm. They examined the buildup, the surrounding interviews, and whether a pattern of behavior could be established to prove actual malice, a high bar in legal terms, especially involving public figures. What emerged from that investigation was the foundation of an $80 million lawsuit, a figure that raised eyebrows and headlines. The legal claim didn't center solely on that one clip, but treated it as the flashpoint in a broader campaign of alleged harm. It became Exhibit A in a case built on the idea that public discourse, especially from figures with large platforms, has real-world consequences that go far beyond ideological disagreements. For Leavitt, the release of that clip marked the beginning of a sustained unraveling. The media, once eager to feature her, became more cautious. Interview requests dried up. Invitations to speak were quietly rescinded. Even allies who had previously defended her began to sidestep the controversy. No one wanted to get caught in the undertow of a scandal that was growing more serious by the day. What made the moment so significant wasn't just the backlash or the lawsuit, it was the precedent it hinted at. If a viral clip can be the basis for an 8-figure defamation claim, then the entire political landscape might be shifting. Public figures, especially those with bold and controversial styles, could find themselves one sentence away from court. And that has left many in political and media circles rethinking how far is too far when the cameras are rolling. The clip didn't just expose a single moment of misjudgment. It pulled back the curtain on a much larger tension in American political discourse. The balance between free speech and accountability, between hard-hitting rhetoric and targeted defamation. And in this case, the cost of that balance is being measured not in likes or retweets, but in legal filings and public fallout. The moment this lawsuit went public, the question wasn't just about whether someone had been wronged, it was about what this meant for politics going forward. Was this a clear case of accountability being delivered through legal channels, or the beginning of something more troubling, a world where lawsuits become weapons in the ongoing battle for public power? The case has stirred up that debate in full force, and no one watching can deny the implications go far beyond two individuals caught in a personal dispute. At the heart of the controversy is the notion of political lawfare, the strategic use of legal action to silence, punish, or cripple a political opponent. To some, this lawsuit is a textbook example. An influential political voice, once considered untouchable in their camp, suddenly finds themselves buried under the weight of an $80 million lawsuit. Critics of the suit argue that it's less about real harm and more about setting an example. Shut down the rhetoric, control the narrative, and remind others that consequences can come not just in the form of public opinion, but in the form of financial and legal ruin. But on the other side of the debate, many see this as long overdue, justice. They argue that public figures, especially those with national platforms, have gotten away for too long with making reckless, harmful statements with zero accountability. In their view, the legal system is finally catching up to the digital age, where a single video clip or soundbite can spark waves of hatred, threats, and real-life danger. This lawsuit, then, is not about silencing someone, it's about drawing a line in the sand. It's about telling public officials that power comes with responsibility, and crossing that line can carry a hefty price tag. Legal scholars and political analysts are divided. On one hand, there's concern that a precedent like this could chill speech, especially among those who rely on strong rhetoric to fire up their base or expose corruption. Could lawsuits like this discourage whistleblowers? Could they discourage tough questions or controversial opinions? Some warn that it might. On the other hand, there's recognition that the freedom to speak does not mean freedom from consequences, especially when speech turns into targeted attacks that damage reputations, livelihoods, or even personal safety. This growing tension between free speech and defamation law is not new, but this case has brought it into sharper focus. Especially in the political arena, where heated exchanges are the norm and dramatic claims are part of the daily discourse, where is the line? When does passion become poison? And who decides? The court, of course, will ultimately have to weigh these questions in legal terms, applying standards like actual malice and public harm. But the public is already rendering its own verdict, and it's deeply divided. What makes this situation so unique is the cultural climate in which it's unfolding. The country is already polarized, with each side quick to accuse the other of censorship, bias, and manipulation. In that environment, a lawsuit like this doesn't land quietly. It becomes a symbol. For some, it represents the collapse of free expression under the pressure of political correctness and legal intimidation. For others, it represents a long-awaited reckoning, a signal that hate masquerading as opinion will no longer be tolerated. Meanwhile, the person at the center of the suit is caught in the crosshairs of both legal scrutiny and public judgment. Every word they've ever said is now fair game for dissection. Every interview, every tweet, every quote is being reevaluated not just by lawyers, but by the court of public opinion. There's no room for error, no way to walk back what's already out there. That's the reality of political life in the digital age. When you speak into a microphone, the echoes can follow you for years, and sometimes straight into a courtroom. No matter how the case unfolds, one thing is certain. This is no longer just about personal grievances. It's about setting the boundaries of speech in a world where politics, media, and law are constantly colliding. It's about redefining how power can and should be held accountable, and what tools are fair game in that process. And whether people see this lawsuit as justified or unjust, everyone knows it's going to change the rules. As the legal battle unfolds, the implications of this case are reverberating far beyond the courtroom. It's no longer just about one individual filing a lawsuit against another. It's about the evolving nature of public discourse, the limits of political expression, and the price of stepping over those boundaries. In a world where headlines are written in seconds and reputations can be destroyed with a single clip, this lawsuit is a powerful reminder that words matter. And in today's political climate, they carry weight like never before. This isn't just a celebrity feud or a fleeting media frenzy. It's a clash of values, where free speech collides with responsibility, and public power faces the consequences of unchecked rhetoric. It poses a hard question to everyone with a platform, especially those in politics. When does tough talk become legally actionable harm? And more importantly, who gets to decide? While some view this lawsuit as a dangerous precedent that could stifle political debate, others see it as a long overdue assertion of accountability. It has sparked conversations across party lines in courtrooms, boardrooms, newsrooms, and homes. And no matter which side people fall on, there's a shared realization that the political landscape is shifting. This case may very well define what is acceptable in modern political communication. It challenges everyone, lawmakers, media figures, activists, and voters, to think more critically about how we engage with one another. The rise of social media has allowed voices to reach millions instantly, But that reach comes with a cost when recklessness replaces reason and when confrontation eclipses integrity. What happens next could influence not just how political speech is treated in the legal system, but how future public figures choose to speak altogether. Will it lead to more guarded conversations, more scripted appearances, or will it encourage greater mindfulness and respect in public dialogue? The ripple effects are already beginning to take shape, and the final verdict, both in the courtroom and in the public's eyes, will echo for years to come. In the end, this story isn't just about one lawsuit or two opposing figures. It's about a culture coming to terms with the power of words in an era defined by division, speed, and spectacle. Whether viewed as justice being served or free speech under siege, the outcome of this case will serve as a landmark moment in how America navigates the fragile balance between expression and accountability in the